I have never been satisfied with the way Skyrim handles difficulty. Changing the settings just causes enemies to have more health and damage output, meaning you just have to optimize your character more and drink a lot more potions. My main gripe with this is that changing the difficulty doesn't enhance the way you interact with the game, and I would argue, due to the focus on optimization, it pulls you away from the parts of the game that focus on immersion. Recently, I saw the Skyrim Iron Man video series by Joov, as well as some other creators doing the same thing, so I booted up Skyrim and adapted some rules for my playstyle. The rules I used were no merchant trading, no looting equipment, and more specifically, you can only equip items you've crafted, no container storage, so inventory only, expert difficulty, which just felt like the right difficulty to go with, enchantments only from quest reward items. That being, you can only disenchant quest rewards and nothing else. The rules I didn't use were survival mode, I'm just not really a fan of Skyrim survival mode, and I did not do permadeath. Now, while I didn't do any death rules because I'm just trying this out for myself, I think a good adaptation instead of permadeath would be, when you die, drop all items except your pickaxe. Now, the first thing I'm going to say is that this is definitely the most fun I've had with Skyrim since I first started playing back in 2012. It is a common thing to hear people say that they wish they could play Skyrim for the first time again. And when I hear this, I think about what I actually did when I first played. I wasn't looking for optimization, I wasn't running to specific parts of the game to do anything in particular. I spent most of the time following quests, exploring the world, taking in each moment, each dungeon, each encounter, each new item, just as it was. I think it can be hard to enjoy Skyrim in this way now. Even if you can put aside the issues of knowing everything and optimizing on a replay, the moment-to-moment gameplay is dated, the combat is clunky, the RPG mechanics are shallow, and the quest lines are linear and generally not that great on a revisit. Now, this challenge didn't recapture the magic of my early teens and the mystery of exploring a new game world, but it did allow me to really engage with the moment-to-moment gameplay in a way that I hadn't in a long time. And it made me acutely aware of how poor implementation and interaction of multiple systems damages Skyrim's replayability. The biggest thing that I've had reinforced this playthrough is that merchant trading in Skyrim completely destroys any of the resource-based systems in the game, those being smithing, enchanting, and alchemy. Now, anyone who's played the game for more than a few hours could tell you this. The standard optimized gameplay loop for these skills is the following: purchase materials, craft them into the version that gives the most XP and or gold per item, then sell them back to the merchants. Rinse and repeat, and before you know it, you have max gear and an insane amount of gold. There is no incentive to collect materials yourself when you can achieve the exact same thing much faster through trading. The trading system and gold accumulation in Skyrim are so unregulated that you can basically just buy anything you want. The cost of items is way too low for how long it would take to acquire those same items or components. So even if you don't want to do an Iron Man challenge, I'd recommend playing the game without any trading. I guarantee it will be more engaging. Before I continue, I would also like to add that I did allow myself to purchase hay and glass for my house, as it wasn't viable getting it from loot. Smithing is one of the primary things this affects. Although smithing itself is not a big moneymaker, the ability to buy ores and ingots removes any mining that the player would have to do. It also allows for the quick mass production of low-level items as an XP grind. There is no sense of reward in the progression. In Iron Man mode, all of the ores and ingots must be mined or looted. Some of the best training methods are using transmute to get gold ore from iron to craft jewelry, and also crafting leather items from pelts you picked up on your adventures. This is a slow process, but it feels really well integrated with the pace of the rest of the game. It also makes each new piece of armor feel like you've really earned it. And it made me very aware of just how many ore veins are all over the place that I never noticed. Enchanting is a bit of a weird one. Playing the game normally, you can apply highly valuable enchantments to the low-level smithing items you will almost definitely have an abundance of. This will make you an unreasonable amount of golden XP, which you can then reinvest into doing the same thing again. You can then easily find and or purchase items for disenchantment. During this grind, you can eventually enchant sets of items that cause spellcasting to cost no mana. This allows you to cast any spell at any level, making a large chunk of Skyrim's skill trees completely redundant. The Iron Man mode severely restricts enchanting, and I think that makes it so much better. There is no way to gather enough resources and grind enchanting for anything close to max gear, within a reasonable amount of time, that is. The enchantments you have access to are random and restricted to how many quest items you receive. Playing like this incentivizes you to enchant the items you have at the time with the gems and enchantments you have available at the time. They will not be ridiculously powerful, but they will be a nice bonus. One of the videos I watched regarding this style of playthrough was Thane Bishop's, and they talk a lot about alchemy. Something that's highlighted that I agree with immensely is that removing the trade component of alchemy encourages the player to engage with the world looking for items. It makes fast travel less appealing, having a garden actually useful, and tunes the player to the game environment. Now, the point I want to make is, like smithing and enchanting, progression is ripped apart by the overabundance of items available to purchase and the resale value of potions. The combinations of ingredients, when used appropriately, will make potions that give you ridiculous amounts of XP and are worth ridiculous amounts of gold relative to their components. The alchemy skill, or more so the gathering of materials and functional value of potions, is completely undercut by trading. So, funnily enough, by essentially removing trading from the game, the existing systems become much more engaging, more balanced, more necessary, and help to immerse the player in the game world. Along with this, loot feels much more rewarding. I'm not looking at the number value of items to be sold, I am looking at the item I am going to use in crafting in order to progress my character. And now that you aren't trading, you're going to be collecting heaps of items. This is where the no item storage rule becomes fun. Having to prioritize what items you need immediately and what items you may need in the future, and balancing that with your carry weight and future access to items is so much more fun than filling up chests and containers with endless loot that you will never use. Items feel like they have genuine value because they are truly gone when you get rid of them. For example, I know I need a bunch of orichalcum ingots soon, but they also take up a heap of carry weight. But I also don't know when I'm going to be able to get more. Navigating this is fun on its own, but it also makes for a great payoff when you do get to craft that next set of armor and free up a bit of space. Carry weight restrictions also incentivize consuming consumables, rather than keeping them just in case. My alchemy skill is always slowly getting better, so I should use the potions I have in the moments I need them because they will be replaced by slightly better ones soon. With all of these systems in use and the restrictions in place, the progression of the game actually feels a bit more appropriate thematically and in gameplay. When I've played in recent times, I feel like I've got some starting gear, done some necessary quests, then maxed out immediately. It is like the mid-range skills and items are in a useless waiting zone and are just a formality to tick on the way to get the best stuff. But now, each perk I pick has a lot more weight. I need to plan which items I want to craft, and I need to ensure that I have enough potions to survive encounters. Whenever I craft a piece of new armor, I feel like I really need it to face the next enemies, and I feel like I've really earned it from systematically leveling the skill. Finally, the thing I always wanted was a more difficult version of Skyrim that wasn't just sponge enemies. This is exactly that. This is not a super difficult playthrough unless you're doing permadeath or legendary difficulty, but it is a playthrough which requires engagement with all components of the game in order to play it effectively. I have to use a variety of spells. Sparks is great against mages, Frostbite against two-handers, Conjure Familiar can divert the attacks of high DPS enemies for a moment. Finding spell tomes is probably the most exciting loot out of everything. I specifically played as a Breton so I could have magic resistance. I chose the Atronach stone for that same reason, and I took the recovery perk to offset the debuff. I've been using a variety of shouts that I wouldn't have in the past because now they are necessary in the context of the game. I use basically all of the consumables that I craft because I need them, not just regular potions, but fortifications, poisons, and all the other buffs. There are downsides to playing as a stealth archer because arrows are an expensive to craft resource and not really worth it. But you could play that way if you really wanted to, and I think it would enrich the experience. The clunkiness of the combat takes a backseat and becomes less important because the game is more focused on preparation, items, and using everything you have in the moment. When I play with these restrictions, I am actually thinking about what I'm doing rather than mashing the right trigger as I walk through a dungeon. Skyrim was feeling like a walking simulator, but now, once again, it feels like I'm playing a game.